Hi, Patch. Thanks for joining us today for the conversation. I know that I know you already really well, but I'd love to have you share more about who you are and who you are as a person.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Patch. I'm just a Michigan native. Still here, just rising to the occasion, whenever my community needs it. I do healthcare on the regular, but I'm also an advocate, and I have found myself filling that role for, well, I'd say my whole life, but pretty strongly for about 15 years now. Um, but a mom, a wife, a healthcare worker, and an advocate. And I mean, I know you pretty well too. Thank you for asking me today to
Yeah.
come, but do you wanna introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. I'm a community advocate as well. I'm just really passionate about social justice and fighting for the future that I wish I would have been able to see as a kid and doing my best to give a voice for people that don't have it.
Definitely. Knowing you from way back then, that's we both struggled with that,
Yeah.
in our childhoods that we didn't have that representation
Yeah.
that we knew of.
You
And
were that
so
representation for me growing up. You were one of the first openly gay classmates that I had, and I always admired your fierceness to be bravely yourself, and that wasn't something that we had a lot in the conservative area that we grew up in, and I think having that representation is so powerful and gives hope for people like us that didn't have it when we were younger.
it came straight from my grandma. She just supported me for me. So I
Mhm.
never faltered from it. I'm just me. It's you if you have a problem with me,
Yeah,
if I'm a good person and doing the right things.
yeah.
So, and thank you for that because I've had a few people now come back in adulthood and tell me that, and that's pretty powerful.
So, how have you felt impacted by everything going on with the Trump administration right now?
Oh, that's a weighted question. I mean, it's affecting everything. It affects the community and it affects, queer rights as well. So there's attack, it seems, coming from all angles. But I think it's put me from being aware of everything that we've already fought for to right back into that role of we need to fight again. Um, it's put us on edge as a family, as we know, fascism works down the line until
Mhm.
it's stopped. So right now, they're targeting like, Hispanic communities and, people of color and things like that. And they're actively working towards the trans community. And then I'm sure the queer community is going to be right there with them.
Mhm.
So just switching back into that more being a leader in the community activism role and being I guess I've always been loud, so being loud out there so other people feel, maybe the courage to come out of their shell.
Yeah.
They don't have to be loud, but to just start to help a little with the resistance. And what about you? Because you're a trans person living under this administration.
Yeah, it's been an adjustment. I moved back to Michigan last year after being in California for 7 years, and it was a complete culture shock.
Hmm.
I went from having stronger legal protections and a sense of everyday safety, and just encountering strangers who their baseline was just respect and acceptance. Coming back here, it's been a lot different. I'm now finding myself where I have to be more mindful of the spaces that I'm going into, and if I'm gonna be safe or if somebody's going to respond to me with hostility. Um, I really took that, safety for granted and before moving back, and, like, right now, I'm in the middle of my name and gender marker change, and something as simple as updating my Social Security information is nearly impossible. Currently, if I were to update my information, there's a strong possibility that I could be put on a watch list simply because I'm a trans woman. This administration has already been trying to access trans patients' medical records and other information, and so it's being encouraged by a lot of trans supporting organizations to withhold on that so that we're protecting ourselves. Um, but I'm still trying to hold on to hope that things will get better. Um, States are now starting to stand up for trans people more and protect us. California just signed 2 bills into law last month that ERA helped champion. AB 82 that shields patients and providers of gender affirming care from being tracked or doxxed, and then SB 497, which makes California a trans refuge state. They do that by protecting trans patients' medical information from being accessed by hostile administrations outside of California. Um, so right now, for me, being a trans woman in a purple state is holding two truths: the truth of the fear of created by rising transphobia and the harmful rhetoric coming out of this administration, and then also the hope of change in watching our communities and advocates come together and fight for an inclusive future that we all want to see happen. And so that's the hope that I'm trying to hold on a daily basis when there's so much information coming at us that could invoke fear. But seeing these small changes, like what has happened in California, gives me hope that this isn't the end, that there's still someone holding on to that line that will protect all of us.
Mhm. I think Michigan has some good leadership too. We have
Yeah,
some really good women in power who do care. Excuse me. I have found that in the work that I do, it might not be your local leaders, but there are Michigan leaders who are fighting really hard for inclusive change. And I think young voices are coming to help
yeah.
with that too.
And also, Michigan has recently passed bills with Governor Gretchen Whitmer protecting trans individuals. So, while we are a purple state, it is hopeful seeing some of that progress happen here in Michigan,
Hmm.
especially with the House and Senate being controlled by Republicans.
Yeah.
That was a major milestone for her to make.
Yep.
So, Patch, what is it like being a lesbian mom raising 4 kids right now, specifically 4 daughters in Michigan right now?
Yeah. So it's a wild journey being a mom in general. But being a mom of 4 daughters, we're a household of all women. And currently, right? You don't know what your kids are going to grow up to be.
Thank you for giving your kids that space to
Oh,
safely be
absolutely.
themselves.
Well, we always have, right? Like whatever clothes, whatever they feel, whatever it, people are people, you
Mhm.
know? So right now we have 4 daughters, and it's scary because not only is there a possibility that, maybe they're not straight, but women's rights. There are so many attacks and reversals, it seems, against women in general. And to know that we have to fight even harder to maintain what we do have and get more, it feels like an uphill battle.
I mean,
And
it's been a long battle for you. I mean, you had to adopt your own children.
yeah, yeah. So to legally protect your children and have a legal, strong family and be recognized, you do. You have to go through the whole court system and it's very expensive to terminate any donor. And even if, like, we were both on the birth certificates, so that doesn't matter
Right.
to terminate and then to adopt our own children. But thankfully, that went very well, even though
Good,
one of them was done in a very conservative county, Hillsdale County, actually. Yeah, it went very well.
good.
Yeah. Long process, but it's doable and
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, your girls are also lucky to have parents who have set the example. I mean, you and your partner were one of the first couples to be married when the Defense of Marriage Act ruling came out.
Yeah, so I'm actually ordained, as well. So I actually just head to the city to perform weddings, and we ended up being the first married couple because they had to turn away other couples, unfortunately, who didn't have all the proper paperwork. They're missing one piece or two. So by happenstance, we ended up being the first couple married in Washtenaw County when it became legal. It
Awesome.
was a huge party in the streets, um, unexpectedly so, but it was beautiful.
I remember when that ruling came out, I had been watching your social media feed. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and I was so excited seeing you and your partner getting married, and then watching all of the posts of you officiating these ceremonies. It
Yeah.
was a day that I never thought that we would see in our lifetime,
Right.
and so seeing someone so close to me being on the forefront in Michigan, of all places, was really inspiring and, like, heartwarming because it I just did not expect this to happen.
Yeah, me either. We watch as you say, you watch my social media, right? So I know many people don't know the court lingo or didn't have the outlets, that I had access to be able to follow it so closely. So I was kind of making like easy to understand posts on Facebook and stuff for people, just to see like what was happening in the courts. And as soon as the ruling came in, it was like they said, equal dignity for all. We deserve that. And I didn't expect that to my local town. They put me on the front page of the paper. They put like our wedding photo on the front page,
Mhm.
which in a very conservative area,
Yeah, I
that's
was
how
shocked.
that's how many of our family and friends found out actually. But the huge headline was, equal dignity. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's everything. That's but we've made some good advancements, but there's more
Mhm.
challenge ahead, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and your girls also now have the opportunity to watch you be a voice in the community. Can you tell me more about what's been going on with your advocacy work helping the community with the ICE raids that have been happening here in Michigan?
Yeah, so I mean they started shortly after, this new administration took over. But they didn't really get active in our area until June. And I was headed to a protest actually with my family in my vehicle. And I got a text that ICE was in town and I was 2 blocks away actually. So I showed up. At that time, because it was June, I knew that filming was helping. That's all we knew at that time of how to help, what to do when ICE was around. So I showed up with intentions to just film. But when I pulled in the parking lot, I recognized who they were taking. Those were my community members. It gets me every time.
I feel you.
But I recognized them as my community members. Um, so I immediately got out of my vehicle and I got really loud. And one thing I'll never forget is the smell of those agents' breath, because that's how close I was, letting them know that they are not wanted or welcome. They left with 2 of my community members that day. Um, I did not expect to be contacted by the family a couple days after that, and by the wife of one of the men taken, and she just said, "Can you help me?" and gave me an address. So I went to her house, and she took me to her dining room table, and she just started going through all of this paperwork, just this huge binder, all of his tax paperwork, all of his court dates, everything. He has been here since he was a child and done it by the book. They had a company and everything. He's home now. He's home. In fact, every single person that they've taken from our area is either home or has been safely deported. Most of them are home. So we got busy. We got busy being very aware and making groups to go around and to check for ICE agents. And we got busy helping families who had been affected. One of the things that I figured out by talking to the lawyer, actually, of the man taken in front of me that day, one of the men, was that letters help. So writing a letter to the judge. It goes to the family, then to the judge. And it's basically a character letter about the person, or if you don't know the person, about the good that they bring to the community. Because as we know, immigrants bring very good things to
Mhm.
communities. They're a very important part of our
They're a vital part
communities.
of our communities.
I always tell them we're nothing without them because they're such a strong part of it. Um, to write a character letter and then about what happened, what you witnessed, or what you know happened. You can't put emotions into a letter to a judge, just facts, because they can't rule on emotion. So if you write a letter and you have it notarized, they can take that letter as evidence. And that has helped return people to our community. So I got really busy spreading that information to people. For the people detained, do not sign anything. ICE agents are trying to get auto deportation slips signed, and then they sign away their right to a judge, to see a judge. And everybody here has the right to see a judge. So if you don't sign any paperwork, and then your family can get those letters, you have a higher possibility of coming back to your family. So I got really busy doing that. And then I got busy contacting representatives throughout Michigan, actually, because a friend of mine's nephew was detained and he was here. He is here. He's still here. He's back home as
Awesome.
well. Um, he was detained on his way to work, and the family contacted me and asked me to go get his car. And they were too afraid to even leave their home. And across the whole entire dashboard was his immigration paperwork. And when agents took him, they refused to even look at any of that. Um,
Awful.
a judge ruled him a free man, and Baldwin Detention Center still held him for an additional 5 days. We went on the following Monday, and I told them I wasn't leaving until we left with him. And they laughed at me in my face and told me people don't leave there like that.
They don't know you very well.
Well, he's home, and it took a lot of work. It wasn't just me. It was not just me. I mean, my wife was at home calling people. We had people, many people working on it, but the presence there, when you go to the guards and you say, I'm not leaving without them because this is right, an order from a judge. Um, it's pretty powerful. And he's home, he's married now, and they had their baby actually about a month after he got home. So there are some really beautiful stories out there coming from all this that is happening, though they're not broadcasted as much. I think people are afraid to tell the stories.
Well, I think the work you're doing also highlights that there's other ways right now to be courageous
Mhm,
during this administration. Sharing accurate information, sharing resources,
mhm,
and stepping in and helping your community members, even just checking in with your community members.
mhm.
I think it's important, Patch, to highlight that some of the things that you've been mentioning are other forms of being courageous right now and standing up to this administration without actually taking to the streets. I know for myself, I'm nervous and don't feel safe to be actively protesting, but there's so many other forms of protest right now that I don't think people are aware of. So,
Yeah.
you sharing information, checking in with our community members, that's an act of resistance to this administration, essentially. And like, what are some other things that you have done or recommend as other forms of resistance right now?
Yeah, I think getting connected is really important. I mean, to knowing that the targeted community is even scared to go to the grocery store. Some of them are scared to drive their kids to school. They're being targeted as they're driving down the road. That if an agent notices, a targeted person driving, all of a sudden they're getting swarmed
Mhm,
and taken. So if they don't notice them driving, it helps keep them safe. So delivering groceries, driving people to and from doctor's appointments has been really important actually, because if they're in the back seat, they're not really noticed. So a driver is important. Dropping off groceries, that helps too. And then just spreading that information that, stay home if you're worried. Get a contact within your community that you know, and just network from there. That's how it all builds. The resistance comes from every direction.
mhm, really does. I'm currently on a few Facebook groups for queer individuals here in Michigan and then in Texas, and it's really astounding to me how many people are afraid right now, just don't know what to do
Mhm,
or how to even stand up and say anything. I mean, even outside of the queer community, we have friends that we went to school with that don't know how to stand up and raise their voice, or they feel like I'm just one person, and that's not, and that they don't. There's not anything that they can do. But I think that we have to recognize that there's more that we can be doing. We have to raise our voice and stand up. So I being able to share the resources online for me within these groups has been helpful. There's so many trans kids right now that I've interacted with. There's actually I got introduced to an individual in Texas, right, that lives in Houston. They are on their transition journey and really afraid of transitioning in Houston.
Yeah.
It's a incredibly conservative state, and so I've just shared the resources that I've received through my resources and advocates that I've had. I was really privileged to be able to transition in California and have access to resources and social workers that help make my transition a story that isn't the same story for other trans individuals.
Right.
So I've really tried to use the information that I've gotten from having lived in California and came from a more progressive state to let people know what they need to do.
Mhm.
Um, the bureaucracy of name and gender marker changes is astounding. I mean, you've changed your name and it's a process, and if you can't have your documentation match who you are, that puts you at risk.
Mhm.
And for me, I avoid going to the doctor right now. My medical providers here in Michigan refuse to call me by my preferred name. I was told at a recent phlebotomy appointment that if I wasn't the way that I was, that it wouldn't be so difficult. So I think it's important having this community to find support and be able to know what you need to do. Like, I would have been lost if I didn't have the resources that I have. So I've really
Yeah.
I want I wanna make sure that people have better than what we've initially had. It shouldn't be the baseline anymore.
Right. Right. Well, and when we see one person stand up and be courageous, it catches on. And one voice is very small, but together
Mhm.
it's unstoppable. And I think that's what if we start to look at other states who have more of like an ICE presence, when we see the big groups come together, but these wannabe agents leave. So in any situation, whether it comes from you watching me when we were younger stand up and be courageous, or now, I think it's infectious
Yeah.
in the best way.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So, Patch, what does a healed and thriving version of our country look like for you and even for your family?
Oh, I think where people are free to be themselves, and safe to be themselves, right? That whether we're in a good time or bad time in our country, that does have an impact on people's courage, whether they want to live out loud, right? But that should ultimately be up to them and not the fear of what might happen because they want to be, loudly authentic or quietly authentic. Um, I think that everyone would be able to be safe and protected would be on the radar for a good country for us.
So, for me, a healed and thriving country is one where every single person feels like they belong, where you don't have to fit a mold. You're we're just gonna be valued for the people that we are. It's for me, it's where trans and queer people can breathe. I feel like we've been on this ever since the first queer protest and riot. We have just been fighting, and we need a chance to breathe. It's also a space where marginalized communities don't have to continue to worry about how to protect themselves and be safe. They should just be safe. They're our neighbors.
Mhm.
They're our doctors, our teachers, our colleagues. This isn't okay. And we need to have it where everybody has a seat at the table.